EG manages to take down the Mad Lions' unbelievable 3-0 sweep, and I don't think North American fans could be any happier right now. As well as Worlds, Travis Gafford came out with a really interesting video this week talking about is Riot failing with Worlds, and kind of agree, honestly, with the notion that they are. So we'll get into that and give our 2 cents, and then some Champions Queue drama. We will always get into any kind of drama, no matter how little or how large. Episode 102 of the Clown Fiesta podcast with Blue Jay and J&T 250 starts now. J&T, okay, huge shock. I mean, to me, it's a huge shock. Not that EG beats Mad, but that they just absolutely clapped them. You could talk about how bad Mad looked or how good EG looked. The gap was insane.
Yeah, it's funny because before the series started and sort of leading up to it, obviously everybody's doing their pick'ems. And one thing that Riot has in the pick'ems, and they had it last year as well, was the percentages for who was the favorite, or trying to give somewhat of an accurate representation. And Mad Lions was like 85% and EG was 15%, I think. And while that's a pretty staggering difference, I don't think people really viewed the series with that big of a gap. But at the same time, people expected Mad Lions to win primarily on the notion that they're a European team and we're a North American team, and North America has never beaten Europe in a best of 5 at an international event ever. Is it ever? Or I guess I shouldn't say international event. I should say MSI and Worlds, because Rift Rivals, that thing was a fucking meme. So
yeah, I didn't know about that until the casters were mentioning it. I was like, oh, really? Never? Which is, I mean, that's kind of sad. But hey, for the first time ever, North America greater than EU. And yes, I know it's one best of 5. But like, okay, if you're really going to get upset at people for saying NA better than EU, you got to understand this has been a long time coming. And the amount of times that North American fans have had to watch EU greater than NA in any Twitch chat, any tweet, any Reddit post, any wherever. It felt like there was so much buildup, just North American fans just waiting to be able to shout NA greater than EU without memeing, of course. And it finally happened. So on top of that, by the way, quick thoughts, JNT, on how the EG players or how like the community responded, because people fucking let loose. We saw Inspired literally wave in their faces after
dude, that
they
was
won.
hilarious.
I thought it was hilarious too. So, full disclosure, I do not condone that kind of stuff. I think it's kind of BM, if I'm being completely honest. However, I fully understand anyone. I mean, he hasn't even been in NA long, to be honest. But I fully understand anyone having that that instinct to do that, because for years, European fans have absolutely shit on NA fans, and I know it's not all European fans. I get that. I completely understand. There are some very well non-BM European fans, players, coaches, whatever. But I don't think NA fans can forget all the times that they've just been hard bashed and embarrassed, and for once get the opportunity to feed it back to Europe. So even though I don't condone it, I understand it.
Yeah, and for whatever reason, Inspired is just becoming the villain for whatever reason.
He is.
There was a
Live
lot of
Evil,
talk.
man.
I mean, yeah, regardless of him being on Evil Geniuses and the whole Live Evil meme, there's been so many North American fans, even. I mean, there's been a bunch of flame from European fans, but North American fans more recently have been just flaming Inspired. Like, there was a Reddit post today where he was giving some interview where he was shitting on NA solo queue. And what the fuck's new about that? Everybody shits on NA solo queue. Like, that should not be a surprise to anyone. But for whatever reason, because it was a European pro player who came to North America and is now shit talking North American solo queue, now it's a bad thing, and now it's like, why is this guy doing this? Like, I really don't understand.
Really?
Like, well, no, dude, you should see. Like,
I didn't see that. I didn't see it. That's surprising to me that people would have that reaction, because I'm with you on this. Like, that's not new.
Yeah, dude, it's still on the front page of League Reddit right now. It's
kidding.
It's Inspired giving. It's a quote, like the headline or the beginning of the thread is a quote from the article, and there was a bunch of people on Twitter talking about it. Most notably, Dom was just talking about how Inspired has just suddenly turned into the villain when he's been one of the best junglers in both Europe and NA for the last 2 years. Basically, he was the best jungler in Europe last year when MVP went to Worlds. Was a really good jungler. Came over to North America. EG is suddenly a top team in the league. Summer split MVP. This guy's the best jungler in the league, or at least was performing like it at the time. we
Yeah.
might get into some other junglers a little bit later, but you know, Inspired to me is like I don't understand why there's so much animosity towards this guy and why fans for whatever reason don't seem to be getting behind him. Like this is probably one of the best European imports we've had in the history of European imports in terms of impact on the team that he joined and just overall performances because more likely than not these imports normally fail. And this is one time where he brought over the LEC MVP, he wins a split, wins MVP in the summer split, goes to Worlds, makes it out of play-ins, and has a shot to make it out of groups. Like, imagine if he makes it out of
Yeah.
groups. Imagine if he like goes on a run. Like, this guy is just he's too good. I don't know.
And the thing is, this isn't even a knock to the EG players, but do you remember like a month or two ago, we had the conversation about like how is EG without Inspired? And I don't even remember exactly where we landed as far as like our conclusion on it, but I feel like as time has gone on more, I've felt more and more like this team is just not the same without him. Like I think he has become more and more of an asset. Despite the fact that the other EG players are playing well around him, I still have to give him the most credit. To me, he is still so obviously the MVP, and I think that this play-ins kind of showed that as well.
Yeah,
The other thing too is, do you remember there was what did he say? There was an interview. It was Oh, you know what it was? It was after they lost to 100 Thieves, and he was just blunt about why they lost, and people like kind of said like, "Well, he's not taking like I don't
accountability.
know." Yeah, yeah, yeah. And to be honest, I think there was some truth to that. I do think like there was some things that he could have said that he should have done better. But for the most part, I don't think his intentions were I'm going to bash my team. I think his intentions were I'm going to tell the truth. And I think some people are just a little too sensitive to what the truth is or what his opinion is. And I think maybe that's why some people give backlash to him. Personally, I love it. I don't think, as fans, I don't think LCS fans get enough of the truth. I could just point to TSM as a perfect example of we never know what's actually happening in that org until way later something leaks, right? You have to wait till Doublelift finds something out and then we find out what the truth is. And
Yeah.
so I think with Inspired, within that interview, is just like, yeah, I think we lost because JoJo did this wrong and impacted this wrong, and this is why we lost. Great. No problem. As long as he's not just using his team as a punching bag and he's just being honest, I think it's great. So I can't say enough good things about his honesty and the things that he does, honestly.
Yep. Well, other than EG, we had a bunch of teams in the play-in tournament. We'll do a quick little mini review of the play-in group stage. We'll kind of get that out of the way because there's
Yeah.
not too many notable things to talk about. I'll pull up the standings real quick here and recap it. In Group A, we had
Okay.
Fnatic as the number one team with a 4-1 record. And then EG, Loud, and Detonation Focus Me actually had a three-way tie for second place because at the end of the group stage, they were 3-2. They ended up playing tiebreakers where, what was it? EG had to play DFM, EG won. Then EG had to play Loud, EG won again. So they became the
Hmm.
number 2 seed. And then over in Group B, obviously the big story over there was RNG not being the first seed out of the group. It was actually DRX. I feel like we even talked about this before, but this group was sort of a similar situation to last year's playing group where we had LNG and who was the Korean team? Humble Life in the same
Hmm.
group. And it was, I think people were presuming that LNG was going to be that team to get out, but it was actually Humble Life. So pretty much we're in the exact same situation where people just naturally view the LPL higher than the LCK, and the LCK actually goes out and outperforms them in the best of ones when it actually matters. So DRX avoiding those best of fives. And then, it was kind of a question of who was going to get out and get that second seed between RNG and Mad Lions. They played a pretty close game in the best of ones. RNG came out on top of that. So that dropped Mad Lions down to number 3.
I want to give my perception on the whole, just while we're talking about DRX and RNG here, because RNG was the favorite and the team that we predicted to be number one. Um, the way I look at as far as like LPL versus LCK is, I actually tend to think the LPL has more depth, but I believe the ceiling of both regions is just as equal. Like I could see LCK winning worlds and I could see the LPL winning worlds about as equally. Do you have any agreement or disagreement on that? Uh, I don't know, analysis, if you will.
Yeah, I guess maybe the point I'm about to make is kind of what you're alluding to. Maybe I'm just understanding it a bit differently, but the
Specifically
way,
this year, to be, yeah. I mean this year, I see
yeah,
the LPL as having more depth.
I guess I'll split this into two parts because I would say not exclusive to this year, but the LPL versus the LCK overall. I've always viewed that the LPL has a higher ceiling in terms of the rosters that they bring to Worlds, their potential performances, the just raw skill of some of the players. But the LCK is just normally way more consistent. And I think over the last
Mm.
couple of years at the World Championships, we've sort of seen the LPL teams match those consistency, like match that level of consistency, because constantly you would hear this story year in and year out. EDG goes to World's number one seed, they flame out, don't even make it out of groups, or they lose in the quarterfinals to some European team because they lost to a European team like 2 times in the quarterfinals. But now I think we're getting a lot more consistency out of the LPL, which we normally saw from the LCK every single year. And that ceiling of the LPL is still just slightly higher than the LCKs, in my opinion. So while I do think that the LPL just naturally, I think, does have this slight advantage over the LCK, to me, I still view the LCK teams as a little bit more consistent. And I think while the LPL has gotten to that level, if I was a truly betting man, number one LCK team versus number one LPL team, I'm going to go with the LCK team personally. But
Yeah, I think I would as well, but I don't feel like I think that could change from year to year. Um, Maybe I'm just thinking
yeah,
about Chovy this year and thinking how, like unstoppable, but I mean, we'll
yeah.
wait and see, right? Like
But
you're really going to get tested at Worlds, so and not that to say that he's never been tested, but I'm just saying like I could see a world where Gen G loses to any of the LPL teams remaining, honestly. And it's not that Gen G's bad or anything. They're my pick to win, but I have a lot of respect for all the LPL teams as well. And as you know, JNT, I've said I still think RNG has a chance of winning Worlds, of course, because they've won MSI. Like they were the best team in the world, what, 4 months ago or whatever it was, 5 months ago.
yeah.
Um, so
And
yeah,
then, well, then just to quickly jump on this year's point, because I definitely agree with you when you say the LPL has more depth. And I think a lot of that lies within the champion pools of the solo laners. We've said this many, many times, specifically when talking about North America going to the World Championship. The LPL top laners are going to put it up your bum if you blind pick some dumbass top laner. And
true.
that's exactly what we saw in this RNG DRX game where DRX goes to the blind pick Aatrox, and RNG slams the Jax last pick into the draft. And the way that the game was trending was Breathe was just starting to take over the
Yes.
entire game. You just saw RNG going topside, 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 topside. They went, I think they ganked topside 3 times in the first 15 minutes of
Yes,
the game. They
they
got 2
did.
kills off it. They burned his flash in the first one. And the game to me looked super, super doomed because RNG was winning the opposite side of the map while also being up 2 dragons. But then when the third dragon came around, they really fumbled the bag. Breathe kind of going in a little bit prematurely before his team was really in position to follow up. He then has to, he basically gets one shot, and DRX
Hmm.
is able to pick up the Hextech drag, and they kind of just continue to team fight very, very well into RNG's comp because it was pretty obvious that current RNG wanted to be sort of a split push style comp. And I thought that's what they were going to do with the Jax pick, but their sort of decision to fight the third Drake when they didn't really have positioning and they were already up 2 drags, like they weren't on the clock in terms of getting soul. Like they could have given it up, it would have been fine. But you kind of see different teams have different preferences in terms of if we have the first 2 Drakes, well, definitely we want the third one because we want the fourth one. Or it's we have the first 2 Drakes and we can give up 1 or 2 because we have the first 2. So it seems to be that sort of those 2 clashing styles there where some teams would be willing to give up a Drake if they already have the first 2, whereas others want all 4 just right there in a row to begin with.
I just have a tiny little bit to add on to what you said because I think you're absolutely right. The Jax was running away with the game. And honestly, if these two were to play each other again in like a best of 5 or whatever, I think I would still take RNG just with how much they were smashing that game. The one little hiccup, as you mentioned, was the Jax. I think you were talking about the Jax flank, right? Where he
Yeah,
was
it was at the
and so
third dragon team fight. He's
yeah.
like hiding in the bush.
And the one little issue is that he doesn't get his counter strike off before getting hard engaged on by Rel and Maokai. I think it was.
Yeah, he was going
Just like
for
that, and then
max damage instead of
yeah,
like trying to CC lock him.
and then he dies before he's able to get the counter strike off. And I don't even think Neela had done any damage yet. So like the AD hadn't even touched anyone before Jax is dead. And now you at that point you're pretty much fighting a 4v5, and that's what swung the game in DRX's favor. The other thing that'll add on to that was I believe the only real pick potential to lock down Akali was Vi. Not that there's anything wrong with Vi, but it is difficult for a Vi to do that into Rel and Maokai. And like the other thing is too, once a collie gets Zonia's and she always has Shroud, like it's really difficult to pick off that unit or that champion. And so it felt like the win con was very slim after they threw their big lead, right? If you have the big lead, I don't think that there's much of an issue, but once the game is even, I think you have very small pick potential in order for things to go to your advantage, and I think that's why DRX ended up coming out on top. Was RNG had very small margins for winning fights.
Yeah, and kind of what you said before, where DRX was able to get themselves back into the game, and RNG kind of threw away the 3-4K gold lead that they had. The game just became super team fight centric, and you really saw the power of the engagers on the DRX side and the Maokai and the Rel. And if I'm gonna have somebody on an engager, it better be Beryl, because I mean that guy's a beast on engagers. He was a beast on them when they won the world championship in season 10 on Damwon, and it's safe to say that he was part of the reason why DRX didn't look very good down the stretch in the LCK when it was like full enchanter meta, because he was pretty much an engaged tank only kind of player. So the meta shifting definitely also helps this team, especially with the kind of champions that Deft is known to play. And Maokai, that champion is disgustingly broken. Like, holy
Yeah.
moly. The ult is like better Talia ult in terms of fighting around objectives. Like, you just press the R button on Maokai and they can't walk up. Like, we saw it in this game. We saw it in a couple other games. I want to say it was even in the Mad EG series in game 1. Just you slam down that Maokai ult and you just have to sack the drag because you can't walk into it. You can't face check it, because if you do face check it, you're just going to get engaged on, because guess what? You rooted for a second and a half, 2 seconds because you walked into the ult. So I don't know. It just seems really, really strong. I think Maokai jungle is probably the best jungler that we've seen so far at the tournament. Just like as a pick, I'm not as big of a fan as the Maokai top, because I just think it's like a shittier version of Ornn, which doesn't give the bonus scaling. It doesn't have as good of team fighting. But I mean, in terms of jungle, it's just god tier team fighting.
Yeah, and I think Medios mentioned this on, I don't know what to call it. Should I still call it a co-stream? Whatever
A
you
live
want to,
viewing.
live viewing. Yeah. He mentioned, he's like, I think Maokai is going to be permaban by the end of Worlds, and I think so too. I'm surprised it's not getting there already, because anytime it's left up, people are taking it. And I also think, that's one of the, well, I think Silas is already meta and worth picking, but I think one of the reasons why you're seeing higher priority on it is like, well, if they get they get Maokai, we're taking Silas so that we have the ulti as well. Um, I think that that's one of the reasons why we're seeing so much Silas also, because that ulti is so valuable. And like you mentioned, no one can walk up. Um, yeah, really effective ulti. Now, I want to focus more on EG. Is there anything else on the DRX RNG side of things before we can get to EG?
No, they're both pretty good. They both got good chances of getting out of their groups, but we'll get into that later.
Yeah. So okay, play-in starts, and I don't know about you, J&T. I didn't think EG looked good at all to start. Like, I think there was some like I didn't think they played that well in their game against Loud or whatever. That was either their second or third game, and there was another game that I don't think they played that well. To me, I thought one of the worst games. Well, I don't know if it was one of their worst games, but the Fnatic game, they looked absolutely awful. They started off really well. Let's say that, right? They had the Caitlyn and Lux lane. Um, they kind of just threw away with Vulcan flashing to land the binding. And the thing is, I don't even know if I should flame him for that, because if he lands it, people are praising him like crazy, right? Because they probably stick around, they probably get another plate, and they really start to snowball the game. My criticism, if you will, is that I think they're already snowballing that game anyways. And so I don't think you need to go for a play like that. But again, I kind of feel a little scummy criticizing that, because if he lands that, we're like, Vulcan's a beast and he pretty much just shut down the game for EG. Where do you fall on that?
Sorry, I was thinking of another point to say. Sorry, you got to run that by
That's
me
okay.
again quickly.
You know what play I'm talking about though, when Vulcan flashed Lux
Oh,
King?
yeah, yeah.
And then he ends up getting punished later by Rux on the Leona.
Yeah, yeah.
My point was that if he makes that play, people are praising him like crazy.
Oh, yeah, it's...
But my actual criticism of the play is they were already hard snowballing the game, and I don't think you need to go for a play like that.
Yeah,
So where
it's
do you
just...
fall on the like, should he get criticism for that, or is it just he went for a play and it didn't work out?
I mean, it's definitely sort of your risk versus reward management in a game. I know teams always like to talk about Are you the type of team that just goes for the 90-10 plays or the 80-20s? Are you ones that are more willing to risk it and go for the 60-40 plays? And I think if we've learned anything from the LCS, EG is one of those teams that goes for those 60-40, 55-45 type plays. So I know, me personally, I'm not going to fault Vulcan for something like that when EG is just in general, maybe not in the early game specifically, but EG is a very aggressive team when it comes to picking their spots and making engages. And Vulcan probably saw it, went for it, and hey, guess what? Fuck it. Sometimes you look like a dumbass.
And you know what? Admittedly, I feel a little bit hypocritical bringing it up because even though I still think it's something you shouldn't go for, I always say that like I like the proactive play. I like trying to make the play and making them react to you. In general, I like that. That was not one of those scenarios, though, and it cost them really badly because Rux absolutely stomped on them later. But in that game, as I was mentioning before, I thought EG looked really bad in that game. I could point to like every single player and pick a play where it was like, man, that was really really bad. Like Cowrie taking forever, like a really really late cleanse on the Leona, and then he just gets followed up CC'd anyways. So he cleanses the Leona ulti really late, and then Leona jumps on him anyway. It's like you just may as well not even cleanse at that point. There was Jojo who saw all of Fnatic in his jungle and decided to still walk up and just died. Then there was Impact, like popping the Renekton ult way too early in the brush before the guy even got there. Like little things, but they matter so much. And so, really rough start to the tournament, I would say. But as the tournament went on, I just thought they got so much better.
Yeah,
Um,
it was funny because I felt like after the Fnatic game, and then in the sort of beginning, in the middle of the first best of one against Loud, it felt
mhm.
like to me, if EG was like they had gone to Worlds and their confidence had got destroyed in scrims because
Yeah,
they were probably getting shown, and that's what it felt like. It was like,
it
oh,
did
these
feel
guys
that
probably
way.
got shit on in scrims, and they're just they're playing like complete ass, probably because they
Yeah.
haven't won a game in like a week. And so that's what it felt like. But as you mentioned, as the tournament went on, EG definitely got better and better. They did drop, a crucial game at the end to, I think it was a DFM, to force that three-way tie for second place with the 3-2 record. But I mean, that was
Yeah.
also a really great game out of DFM. And EG, based on their tiebreaker games and their knockout games, look really good.
Yeah, there was the sad against DFM the first game, the sad face check from Impact.
Yeah.
That one was rough because I think they had Scuttle. And like if you have Scuttle, you should be able to see them walking in towards Dragon. Even without Scuttle vision, I'm pretty sure Jojo had vision of the river. Like I think Jojo was in river, so I think Impact should have known that hey, they're not on drag. But I mean, that feels a little nitpicky because again, as the tournament went on, he got so much better. He started getting solo kills in the top lane. There was the one fight against DFM. I think they lost that game, but the one fight, they're hard losing it, but his Aatrox is absolutely cleaning up later on.
Yeah, that,
Obviously
that
he
was
had
in the game they
more.
lost.
Yeah, and then obviously the Aatrox pick seemed to be highly prioritized. I think they first picked it
Yeah.
today.
I don't know why that champion is not getting permabanned either. Like maybe there's just too
Yeah,
many champions you need to permaban, but I think I don't remember what the stats were, but the champ was something like 12-4 in the first 16 games that it got played.
I think that says something about a champion when you're blind picking a solo lane like that. Like top lane usually is like left for counter picks, or like you pick it fourth to like
I
like
mean,
usually you don't blind pick it first unless there's an OP, and well I guess that's an OP right there.
any blind pickable champion in professional play with a very high win rate is gotta be just bonkers. I mean,
Yeah,
I
fair.
know, I know. We always talk about on the show, at least like we don't numbers don't tell the whole story, and we're always like big proponents of that. Not to take random numbers or random facts like and shoot those to the moon, but dude, like 75% win rate champion that's getting blind picked in almost every single game, just ban that shit or like get your dicks out and play Jackson to it because I don't know,
Mm.
champion looks pretty bonkers. The healing
It
is just
does.
ridiculous, and the other thing they don't understand, like with
The
the
damage is
Aatrox,
ridiculous too
well,
though.
and for whatever reason, they buffed. I mean, they buffed like Maw Malmortius, and now there's a lot of double AP kind of compositions coming out from a lot of teams, whether it's AP mid jungle, AP solo laners, but they're just giving Aatrox the free path to the just never die build of Death Stance, Mob Malmortius plus Gore Drinker or Eclipse. Like you just never die if you're facing a double match damage comp. And the weirdest thing is just seeing these Aatrox picks or sorry, when a team early blind picks Aatrox, and then you're picking a bunch of AP into it and just allowing him to go to the small item, which allows him to live forever. Doesn't make any sense.
And the game to me where we really started to see EG turn it on, quote unquote, was the tiebreaker versus DFM. That to me, I mean, you could point to the tiebreaker versus Loud, but Loud kind of just threw them the game, right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I want to give Impact all the credit in the world, but I can't ignore that they just ran it down topside and Croc was just hard trolling. And then Impact picked up a million kills. But to me, the game against DFM, if there's one team fight that I actually really want to highlight, it's I timestamped it. 23 minutes, guys. If you want to go look the DFM tiebreaker versus EG, 23-minute team fight. You just see such nice plays by so many of the EG members. First, Vulcan lands the hook, and then Jojo lands the combo on Hecarim, and he waits for Hecarim to use that ultimate before following it up, ulting back while executing Hecarim and then taking the lantern out was so clean. You had the Aphelios land the ulti snipe on the Gnar, like just so many nice plays from EG. And that to me was like where that was the play where I'm like, okay, EG is playing good now. Like that was where to me I was like, this is not the same team we've seen for the early parts of play-ins. So that was a really good sign coming into today's best of five, in which obviously the best of five became a best of three.
Yeah. I mean, should we just move on to the best of fives or the knockout stage?
Why not?
Yeah. I don't have anything. I don't have any graphics for this, but I mean, we'll talk about the ones that happened yesterday. Yesterday being Monday, which were the matchups of Mad Lions and Saigon Buffalo, and then DFM and Loud.
Mm-hmm. It's funny. I honestly don't even remember these games. How many games? The thing is, how many games have we watched, man, in the last like I actually want to know if you get this too. Do you ever get like an overdose of games when like it's these are long broadcasts, man.
Oh yeah, I
Like
mean they're 10 hours, like or not today at
refresh my
least, but
memory, man.
at least with the play-in group stage, there were some long broadcasts. Let's say.
Yeah, I mean the tournament started awful because there was
Yeah, they played
with the
one game
COVID
in
shit.
two and a
Dude,
half
I thought that was gonna
hours.
be a disaster. I thought that
Yeah,
was
dude,
gonna be
I
the
thought
rest of
I
the
thought they were gonna like fucking pack it up and just like they
ugh.
were gonna go like online mode or something. I was like getting a bit nervous.
Yeah, I thought it was gonna be bad because I mean technically that still could happen with groups, right? What if someone gets COVID? We're not really out of the woods yet. But
But I
anyways,
mean,
we were talking about the
well,
best
one thing that
of
I will
five.
say, just lastly on that, is apparently there was a bunch of false positives. So I don't know if it was people who actually had COVID or if it was a bunch of false positives. I know in the Fnatic bot lane situation, they actually had COVID, but with a lot of the players not being on stage in the first couple days of the playing group stage, that was because of false positives. So if that
I see.
eases your mind a bit,
Well, I wonder how much teams are doing like I don't want to say bubble, but bubble esque kind of things. Like guys, like
probably. I would hope
if
that
there's
they're
any
being somewhat
like
serious about it.
if you guys are hungry, just let me know. I'll go get the food and drop it off at your door just to be safe kind of thing. Like maybe they have some of the staff doing that for the teams. I don't know, but anyways, I hope they do because even though it's I don't expect them to have to do that because that's a big pain in the ass to live bubble life. If there's anyone that can adapt to it, I think it's League of Legends players. um but anyway.
Okay, back on track. Quick summary of the series, at least the first ones. Detonation Focus Me versus Loud. Yeah, Loud got fucking dicked. They should have lost 3-0. You know, I like the passion that, Loud was getting on social media and
Yeah.
on the broadcast. Like, it was cool. Like, they were, pulling out some statistics talking about how, like, they're the most interacted team in the play-in stage in terms of, like, impressions on social media and whatnot because they have such a huge fan base. So I thought it was pretty cool, just all the love that they got throughout the tournament and all the support that
Yeah.
they were getting. It made me, a person who doesn't even give a shit about the CB LOL, actually have some sort of interest in this team watching them play because normally I couldn't give a fuck who's playing in these minor regions. Like I really couldn't care less. But the story behind it and just seeing passionate people about it's like, oh, okay, cool. Let me watch their games and actually like have some interest. But they got their shit kicked in by DFM. It should have been a 3-0. DFM just for whatever reason, like Olaf just ran them over in that one team fight in the first game. But
I would also
Yaharong
say
and Yutapon were just dicking their opponents on repeat
yeah,
the whole
I,
series.
To your point about them having like a lot of fans and creating hype, I definitely agree. But I would also say that people have become big fans of DFM as well over the last couple of years because they've kind of been that minor region team that seems to, not perform like a minor region. Last year, obviously making it to groups. I mean, yes, first time, but still respectable. I believe they looked pretty decent at MSI as well. Was that them at not this MSI that just passed the
That
year
was
prior?
2021 MSI, but yeah.
Yeah, the year prior. Then that was where we started to see them have a lot of success, I would say. And so I think that people are starting to become hyped with them as well. So I think in that series you kind of had two teams that people actually care about, which you can't normally say about minor region teams.
Yeah, that series was the closest in terms of the percentage of what they received in terms of the pickums. I think it was 66% DFM, 33% loud, like, you know, two thirds, one third kind of thing.
So you were cheering for Loud then?
I like DFM. I mean,
Hmm.
I just mean it just gave some reason to like have some sort of interest in the team. It wasn't like, okay, DFM's kicking these guys' teeth, and it's like, oh, okay, loud. These guys are actually kind of cool. And I mean, they had that one clip where Brant's like flexed to the camera with the bot cap on him on his
Yeah, that was hilarious.
and that was really funny.
Speaking of Brant's, guys, look at JNT 250 and tell me he's not Brant's without the eye
Nope,
piercing.
nope.
Yeah, I think we found a match.
He's got black hair. I got brown hair.
I can't say I was the one that pointed that out, but one of our friends pointed that out, and I can't stop seeing it now. I think JNT and Brant's got a little bit of a clonage thing going on there. Now we all we got to do is we got to get your hair a little different color and give you an eye piercing and really put it to the test.
Nah, I'm good, thanks.
Okay. What was after that?
There
I
was
don't remember.
Mad Lion, Saigon Buffalo.
Oh yeah.
That was actually kind of a closer series in terms of games 1 and 2, at least. Games
Mhm.
3 and 4 were pretty big stomps in Mad Lion's favor, but even game 1 was a pretty exciting game. Game 2 as well. Saigon kind of just came out the gate and smashed them, but it just we always talk about like, was this a close 3-1? No, it wasn't a close 3-1. Mad Lions was the better team, but Saigon put up a decent fight. Another team that people have a big interest in because of the whole visa situation and them being at MSI and them just having a pretty good social media presence. That to me seems to be the main thing with a lot of these minor region teams. If you just have a good social media presence and sort of get your team and get your players involved, specifically in terms of it being North America at Worlds, because we see in the LCS like shit talking on Twitter is just the number one pathway to getting recognition and notoriety at all. And a lot of these teams joined in with that, and it just kind of made the playing stage more exciting. And the VCS, finally, we got them back, so Saigon Buffalo was able to be there. Were they the best of teams in the playing stage? No, but they tried some things. They tried Zach Mid a couple times, didn't really work out, but
Yeah, true. I respect for the Zach mid. I
yeah,
loved it. I would say that in the best of with Mad and Fongvu Buffalo, if you will.
I don't know, Saigon.
Um, yeah, I know. I thought I that was where I was actually kind of scared. Like I don't get me wrong, I was kind of scared about Mad Lions anyways. I didn't think that that was a team that you should just look over. But I mean, El Yoya was kind of beasting on the Belveth. Mind you, I think that was permabanned against him today, wasn't it?
Yeah,
And even Niski looked like a completely different player yesterday playing uh the Vex as well. Now, I don't know, did the Vex get banned against him today?
no, I don't think I
So
got
they
banned a
just didn't
single
play
time.
it. Interesting.
I don't see it on the ban list. They had the
Mm.
same. They had the same bans for 2 of the games, first 3 at least.
Anyways, when it came to I want to talk more about today's series. Do you have anything else other
No,
than
no, we'll move on.
so let's get into the EG Mad series that we watched today. I mean, where do you want to start with this one, JNT? I don't even know where to start. I think they just looked better than them pretty much everywhere. I think a lot of the criticism was thrown towards Niski, and I didn't think Niski played that well, but I didn't think he played that bad. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, the thing to me, kind of looking at this series as a whole, it just felt like Mad Lions, they never got their comfort picks and they just didn't look very good. I know there's the whole meme about Armut and him playing. He's got his champion ocean of Dinonar pink chroma, Dinonar blue chroma, Dinonar green chroma, but like they just banned Nar every single game in the series. Armut did not look comfortable on any of the picks. He picked Ornn, Gwen, and they picked Rumble in game one, which was like kind of out of left field, but made sense a little bit
He
in terms
did
of
have the nice rumble ulti that one play, right? Where they kinda swung things back in their favor a little bit. It looked like a losing fight, and then the nice rumble ult came down,
yeah,
and I think they went even on that fight, so I gotta give some credit to that.
yeah,
Was there any,
it
like, standout bad plays from the rumble? I don't even
not
remember.
really. I mean, it made kind of sense into their like team fighting comp, and they had a bit of pick potential with the Vi and the Rumble. You kind of saw that do some work a little bit in the early game. I know they got like one pretty good gank off where they did Vi ult into the Rumble ult, and he got toasted. But I mean, EG just implemented the very simplistic game plan of hey, let's ban out their best champions, and guess what? It worked perfectly. They got rid of Elioyo's best champion in the Bel'Veth. They got rid of Armut's best champion in the Gnar, and they got rid of one of Unforgiven's best champions is
Seraphine?
Seraphine. Yeah,
Yeah.
they banned Seraphine 2 of the 3 games, and not to say that that's one of his best champions, but it's a strategy that Mad Lions was using a lot of early on in the playing stage, and it just felt like Mad didn't get their comfort picks, and they didn't look very good, and it just seemed to be as simple as that. I mean, they were obviously individually playing very very bad, but in terms of how the games played out, the team fighting, the early games, they just didn't look comfortable.
And the place where I get the Niski criticism from was listening to Doublelift, Meteos Sneaky. I think they were going like way too hard on Niski. I when I was
Yeah, I mean,
rewatching, so I was just rewatching like the highlights, trying to see like because I mean I wasn't really seeing it what they were seeing when I was watching, and the thing is they have a tendency to kind of dogpile
yeah,
on
on
one guy
one player.
or like or focus too much on one guy and like oh what's he doing wrong, and I don't even know if they realize that they're doing it, but they kind of do. And I think it gives a skewed perspective of how the player is actually performing. There was a couple of moments that I'm like, okay, this was bad. So the one, it was game one. It was like he was at red buff near dragon, and he like flanked, and EG clearly spotted them, but then he went in anyways and just died. I was like, okay, that's an int. The other thing that I could point out was he was getting hard clapped by Jojo Pyun set in game two. Other than that, there wasn't anything too egregious. There was the one flank where he ends up getting caught, but like EG was on Baron. I think you TP flank that all the time because you need to stop. You need to find a way to get them off Baron. And yes, he dies in the flank, but you pulled them off Baron. So like, there's some good that comes out of that. To me, I guess I wouldn't say that he had a good series, but to me, I think they focused way too much on him being the reason they lost, and I just didn't see it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a little bit of a shared effort in terms of the inting that was going on because Elyoya,
Absolutely.
he looked pretty terrible. Kaiser, I wouldn't say he looked terrible, but he kind of just looked ineffective. It's always, you never want to be, in my opinion, you never want to be that guy in a series who did nothing. Like he didn't do anything good, didn't do anything bad, but he didn't do anything really for the
Yeah,
most
that's
part.
fair.
And Armut just, like I said before, just didn't look very comfortable. Was pretty much down in every single lane. I think except for game two, he actually had a little bit of a lead in the Ornn versus Gangplank matchup because they threw a lot of resources at him for the first 3 minutes of the game, burning GP Flash and getting a kill early on. But other than that, I mean, Armut just kind of looked outclassed, which was surprising considering that Impact normally acts as a neutralizer in whatever lane that he's in. But he was just losing to Impact straight up, minus that early part of game two.
Well, and not to mention, Impact was getting hard clapped by Robo against their game in their game against Mad, right? Like in lane, I'm talking about. And I mean, it's one game, but like I'm just saying the difference of what you would expect from what we had seen so far in plans coming into today. You're not expecting Impact to just hard stomp. Maybe you would expect that if you only watched the tiebreaker against Loud. Um, but yeah. Um, the one guy from Mad Lions that I thought looked good was Unforgiven. Obviously, you could tell that he's a
he
Draven
he
player.
was the other
His,
guy getting all the praise on the live viewings.
oh, was he? I didn't even recognize that.
Oh, he was. I
Um,
mean, he was
his
mechanically
Draven looked
playing
good.
really well. Yeah.
Yeah, it like there was so many. That was the only guy from Mad Lions that like me as a viewer I was afraid of. I was like, oh fuck, look out for that guy because like that guy's kind of beasting on the Draven. There wasn't really much else that I saw that was too like, oh look out for that guy. It was just that. But even him, you could point to like in game one. I guess you could kind of point to both bot laners. They push up to tower. They should know full well that EG's bot lane is rotating down, and Vulcan gets the nice Tom Kench knockup, and they end up getting the double kill for the Varus right away. So like I mean, that to me is a perfect example of like they should not be pushed up, but also really nice play from Vulcan landing everything, getting the double kill from for Varus. So yeah, I mean I could go on about more plays for EG. They looked good everywhere.
Yeah. If I had to pick one person out from EG, it probably would be Vulcan. Mainly because I said this on Twitter. But dude, Tom Kench 1v9 in that first game, straight up. I mean,
He had a great game.
you just mentioned that bot play that he had, which basically turned the tides in terms of bot lane farm and gold and whatnot. I don't know when it was, like maybe 10, 12 minutes. And then pretty much every single team fight was munching priority targets when they got CC chained or when they were getting with the Vi Rumble ult combo. Like he was eating up the correct target. Yeah, sure, you might have to sacrifice somebody else, but you eat the target who's getting caught. And to me, Vulcan was like straight up the guy who won them the game in game one and just overall had a really solid series. I mean, I thought his Braum in game three was also really good. He was playing Yuumi in game two, so like what the fuck? Like, you can't
So
really do too terribly on Yuumi when your
but
team's
he
winning.
had
So
the one Yuumi ult was a really nice zoning ultimate though in the where Raptors are kind of
mhm,
on the bottom side of the map. Like
yeah.
that was really really nice. I do have to disagree with the whole 1v9 thing the more I think about it. Cuz I'm looking at my notes here. And I have to point out that EG started throwing in game 1. You remember they lost a few guys in the jungle and then Mad goes to Baron. But then Impact just he just completely erases Niski, and I know you could point to Aatrox being busted, but he landed all three parts of his Q and just erased Niski from the map, not allowing Mad to get that Baron. I think if Mad gets that Baron, they win that game. So I got to give some credit for it to Impact
I
for
don't know if they
stopping the
win the
throw.
game, but
See, I think they do. I think they
I
probably
think
win
they're
that game.
getting mega outscaled. So I don't know. Just my opinion, though.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we won't ever know because that didn't actually happen. But the game was definitely starting to swing in their way because EG had the lead early on. They just kind of threw a little bit. And Impact said, "No, I'm going to erase Niski and kind of save them from getting Baron." So that's one area that you could point to. The other is the amazing steal from Inspired on the Maokai. I don't know how he got that Baron, man. He does the twisting, whatever the W's called, on Maokai, flashes in and just smites and takes. I don't even know if he had vision. I don't know how he did that, but that
It's
was a
just
huge, huge
YOLOing in
Baron.
there.
Yeah, that was insane. And so that was another play where it's like, I think it was more than just Vulcan. Even if I totally agree, Vulcan had a great game, and I could totally point to Vulcan being a reason why they won this game. I just don't think he was the only
That's fair. I mean, can't disagree with that because I mean, a lot of other members on EG played really well.
reason. Then we go over to game two. I mentioned how Jojo Pyun was kind of just shitting on Niski mid. The thing that was crazy was not only was he out trading him mid, there was worries going into that game that there wasn't enough AP, and then someone on the broadcast made the joke of like, "Who cares? You got true damage," and it was like, well, okay, I can see why they say that, even if they were kind of joking, because Jojo was still putting out great damage in team fights. Um, the other thing is Niski is known for roaming. Like that's his thing is shove and roam and help out side lanes and get advantages over there. Jojo was out roaming him. The one play Mad go for a dive bot lane. First of all, I don't really know why because they didn't know where Yuumi or Jojo were. The point is, they
Oh,
still ended
that
up
was
going for that
so
dive.
grief.
Yeah, they still ended up going for that dive, and Jojo is there in time to help them say, "Oh shit, we shouldn't be doing this." They pull off from the dive and get cleaned up because Yuumi and Set show up. So, yeah, I don't know. Good plays from EG for roaming over and recognizing that the dive is about to happen, and shame on Mad for thinking they could do that without knowing where those two guys are.
Yeah, I mean, Elyoya, in that play you're mentioning specifically, like that, like just starting up a dive there is just so random when you have no vision
Yeah.
of two crucial members.
And that's to me is an area where like why aren't we pointing to that instead of just saying, "Oh, Niski is
No,
running
I
it down."
agree.
You know what I mean?
I agree.
Yeah. Like there's that
I
was the
do.
reason or
If
one of the reasons why they lost that game.
I know, in the live viewings, which we were probably watching, in Twitter or whatever, they were probably putting most of the blame on Niski. I put it on Elyoya. That guy played like fucking dog shit. I mean, like straight up dog shit. Niski was, he unfortunately was following plays and a few of the ones we talked about earlier where he's flanking behind. Like, guess what? Like, when you're behind and you're trying to look for a fight, like when you're the flanker, like you kind of just sometimes you got to go in and you might look like a dumbass in int, but you have to do it sometimes. And Elyoya, he just his what's the word I'm looking for here? His selection of plays that he went for was not very good the whole
A little bit
series.
questionable, perhaps.
Yeah, and I mean, just individually was obviously not playing well either. I mean,
Yeah.
he had a good start to game two, with the ganking top lane thing. Um,
He did.
but
That
other
was
than
Trundle. He was playing Trundle, right?
yeah, other than that,
Yeah.
he was horrible.
Yeah. And then on the other side, his counterpart, Inspired. I mean, we mentioned how this guy's been such an important piece for EG, and how I personally, I think that I think he's kind of the brains of the operation. I mean, and you got hands in like JoJo, for example. I Inspired is God. I can't say enough good things, man. First of all, that guy's a sniper on Sejuani. He's like the opposite of Smithy alt meme with Sedge. He lands them all. Really good instincts with the Sejuani. Also, I guess you could say the same thing about Impact too. It felt like EG was just landing all their Sejuani ults, so that's one good thing. The other thing is in game three, he ganked top twice with Lee Sin and got the game snowballing early. He was up by with 2 kills by 6 minutes in that game, and was like, that to me was the real dagger, if you will, in the series. Was like, I'm not even going to give Matt a chance to have life in this series. I'm going to start stomping them early and often, and well, they did. So
Yep. And then our other series that we had today was RNG versus Detonation Focus Me. Now, after the quick 3-0 of the EG versus Mad Lions, everybody was expecting a nice quick 3-0 of Detonation Focus Me, and well, that did not happen because game one, DFM came out and just put their nuts on the table and just picked Giga Chad teamfight comp and just beat RNG. They were pretty much even in every single lane. Steel was making a lot of great plays early on the map. And then you saw the teamfight power of Kennen, Maokai, Yone, basically.
hmm
With,
even Udapon
I
was
mean,
pretty good
he's
too.
playing 80 carry, so, I'm not, there's
Yeah.
nothing special there, but,
Insert 80 carry here and
yeah.
you're gonna have
Play,
damage.
play
Yeah.
any carry, play any 80 carry in that game. Obviously, Trist being a engaging
He
type 80
still
carry
played really
was,
well
oh,
though.
he
I don't
did.
want to make it
I'm
sound like, oh, he's just yeah, I know you know that. I just don't want to make it sound like we're not giving him any credit just because he's playing 80 carry. That's not
he's looked fantastic the whole play. I mean,
yeah, yeah.
he did look fantastic.
Um and then things went to shit. You know what this series reminded me of? It reminded me of FlyQuest versus TL.
Yeah, honestly, same.
Because
Game two was super
game
sad though because I feel like if Yarong actually built like real items and didn't build the Bork tank build, I feel like they would have won that game. Like there were those two huge moments in the side lane where they're running down Aatrox for what felt like 2 minutes, and then he barely lives with 1 HP, and RNG shows up, cleans up the rest of the fight. I just, if you're building actual damage, you probably just kill him there and you peace out. No, but I mean, it's maybe not as simple as that, but it just really felt like those two plays where they're trying to catch breathe in the side lane with, Sejuani Yone and just dealing zero damage to him because he's out healing all of their damage was just so sad when they had a lead in that game. Like, they had a lead. I thought they were going to win game two. I was like, holy shit, DFM's
yeah,
about to be
me
up
too.
2-0. And then side lane play, oh, fuck, they couldn't kill him. Just got blue balls. Oh, fuck, they couldn't kill him again. Dude, it was so sad.
Yeah, things fell apart really quick. And I guess that game two is where the series was different than the TL Fly one, I guess.
Yeah.
Because I don't think any other game other than game one in that TL Fly series was close. Whereas this one, game two, DFM could have taken it, which I'm not going to lie, even if they went up game two, I think everyone would still have reverse sweep in their mind just because it is RNG. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I still thought DFM had a good tournament. They still continue to look like one of the better minor region teams. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't think this is the last time we see those players. I think we'll see them around for a little while, and hopefully we see them at MSI next year and maybe Worlds next year.
Yeah, I mean, here's one thing that I'll pose a question right here.
hmm
If in a world where DFM wins out on those tiebreakers and finishes as the second seed in Group A of the play-ins, do they beat Mad Lions in the best of five? Based on what we saw, I think they beat Mad Lions.
Yeah,
But maybe that had something to do with what EG did and them banning out the OP champions. Maybe DFM
right,
doesn't do that and they get their OP
right.
champions. But if you would have inserted DFM into EG's situation that they played that best of five against Mad Lions, I think DFM wins that. So it just kind of goes to show the importance of those best of ones for the playing stage because that seeding really matters. You being the 2 seed is so crucial. I mean, obviously, you want to be the 1 seed, but if you're not the 1 seed, being the 2 seed is super important because you're basically getting a much easier best of five.
I think it's totally fair to bring up the performance level that we saw today. But I also think you're right to bring up well, maybe DFM doesn't ban out these champions, and maybe the matchups are different. So I can't just say automatically that DFM beats Mad, but I think it's a fair point to bring up because I do think DFM looked better against RNG than Mad looked against EG, which
Yeah.
yeah, big surprise. But again, I still think EG played really, really fucking good, man. So like maybe you just have to give credit to EG. I don't know. It's kind of tough there. Before we move on, just some other little questions that I want to ask you. Do you have an MVP of play-ins, JNT?
I think I just have to go with Deft. I mean, that guy, he's too good. I don't know.
Mhm.
He was looking like, what was he looking like? He was looking like season 10 Deft when he was on DRX before he did his little 1 year stint with Hama Life where he was just winning all the time.
So I got a few honorable mentions here.
The rest is
Um,
DRX.
before I pick one, no. Um, one is upset. Because I think that he absolutely smashed in pretty much every game. Not only that though, like the
Except for the
one
loud
game.
game where he got solo bullet, but
Sure, but the one game that won them the group, in my opinion, was the game against EG where they're getting hard stomped under tower because you're against Caitlyn Lux, right?
yeah.
But then they still end up coming back in that game, and now he's absolutely styling despite being in what is a really tough situation. So that's one mention. Obviously, Inspired. I've gone on the whole episode about how good I think Inspired is, so I won't say any more of that. I guess in short, I'll just say I think this team struggles a lot without Inspired. And last one is Zeka. Is it Zeka or Zeka? It's Zeka, right?
Hey, who the fuck knows? We'll probably say one and it'll come out and be like, oh, sorry, it's this actually.
Yeah. That happens every play-ins, honestly. But the Akali game, the game that the again the deciding group game, I guess, the one where they beat RNG. I think his only job is to not die because he's the target. I mentioned earlier how they have Vi. Vi's going to want to shut down the Akali because it's Akali, right? That's the reason you pick Vi. And he didn't die at all in that game and still put out a shit ton of damage.
Yep.
So, and then obviously he continued to shit on everyone else as the group went on as well. But that to me was the most important performance, I guess, for them to take number one in the group. So those are the three honorable mentions. I think I still got to go Inspired, and I know, people are gonna be like NA bias. Yeah, uh, there's bias. I'm not allowed to. I'm not saying that I'm deciding with bias, but I am an NA fan. I can't not be an NA fan anymore. And I do think that he looked the best for his team. So I'm giving Inspired the MVP, and you can get mad at me if you want.
Two
uh,
MVPs. Let's go
yeah,
Inspired.
yeah. Last question, JNT. Is there a new player that you think is LCS bound, if you would? No, not necessarily LCS, but your Jose Diotos of past, where like he had a really good play-ins 2 years back and ended up getting an LCS spot. Or you mentioned who else did you mention earlier when we had this conversation?
River last year.
River and then Arya, I think, as well.
Yeah, well, Arya went to the LCK, but still,
Right. Yeah.
he was a really young player. He was on DFM last year, actually, and I remember I predicted it. You can go back and check the fucking episodes. I predicted it. I said he was going to be in the LCK, and it happened. He wasn't
Did
very
you?
good, but, we won't talk about that. We'll just talk about the part where I got my prediction right.
Very good. For me personally, I didn't have anyone that stood out that much that I think they would get a spot. Now I could be wrong, right? There's probably, I mean, scouts have their eyes on these games, right? So I wouldn't be surprised if there's someone, but there wasn't anyone to me that stood out as like someone's got to sign this guy. Other than Brant's just for brand recognition, because I think there was a lot of more Brant's fans, but I don't think you build a team just because a guy writes some marker on his arm and flexes.
Yeah, I mean, the one guy that I think, I pretty much maybe the one guy I would really only point out as being from what I saw, a really solid player in a minor region team that didn't really do a lot of damage at the tournament is
Mhm.
Shogun on Saigon Buffalo.
Okay.
He's probably the only one that I thought, he kind of felt like, a bit of a doggo situation where kind of an unknown guy just shows up and starts carrying the fuck out of games. And yeah, they're playing games, they're not against the best teams, but seeing that potential skill ceiling is always really important when trying to evaluate a player. It's an important part of evaluating players. Obviously, you want sort of longevity and consistency, but sometimes you need those kinds of players who just have the fuck it, I'm going in moment and kill everybody.
Yep.
So it'd
Fair
be
enough.
him. If I had to pick another one, it might be Husha, but he was the jungler on BYG, but I think part of that is because I thought he was good last year. I don't know. I don't think he was that great this year, but I just remember his performances last year on BYG being pretty decent. But I probably unlikely that he's in NA. Maybe he goes to like
Yeah, the bigger issue is, like, LCS specifically doesn't really have a jungle demand, you
yeah.
know?
That's why I
That
say
doesn't mean it
Shogun
can't
really.
happen. Doesn't mean it can't happen, but it's just less likely to happen this particular year because I think North America is mostly, not completely, but mostly set on junglers. But yeah.
Yeah.
Should we move on to the group stage now?
Yes. What we all came here for. What Worlds is all about. The group stage.
Yeah. Uh, Take it away. I don't even know where to start with this
Yeah,
one.
I mean, we might as well just go group by group. But first group, Group A. As we all know, the 2017 version of the group in 2022, we have Cloud9, T1, EDG, and Fnatic joining the group after making it out of the playing stage as the first seed from Group A. And obviously, they've been talking about the storyline of C9, T1, EDG, them having the same mid laners as they did in their groups in 2017. And in that group, if you recall, C9 and T1 made it out. EDG and AHQ did not make it out. But to me, this group feels like it really depends to me on how EDG looks. Because if we see the EDG of early LPL and we see the EDG of Season 11 Worlds, I feel like EDG's got to be the number one team in this group. But at the same time, if we see the EDG that we're normally accustomed to seeing at the World Championship and not Season 11 EDG, I feel like EDG could be third or fourth even, because just the way that we've seen them historically play at the World Championship. And we talk about Fnatic, they're a team that is always performing well at the World Championship, regardless of the situation. Maybe let's exclude last year because that was like pretty, extenuous circumstances. But for the most part,
Yeah.
Fnatic is always playing well at Worlds.
And it's funny because we were talking about like what issues Fnatic might have just in play-ins alone, because there was, we didn't know when players were going to play, and I know we kind of mentioned like there's a chance that just everyone on Fnatic shows up and everything's fine, and yeah, that's what kind of happened. But even this, like, I still wouldn't say they're out of the woods as far as like they still haven't had as much time to practice as everyone else. Yes, they have time to prep now and whatnot and to get scrims in now, but you're still at a disadvantage, right? And that's something I don't think you can let go, especially when you're in what is a pretty competitive group, right? You got the number one seed from North America, and then obviously two absolute powerhouses in T1 and EDG. Even if they aren't number one seeds, you could kind of look at those teams as being world's contenders, obviously, right? So
Yeah, I mean T1 and EDG, you just kind of look naturally
yeah,
at title contention because T1 is T1 and EDG just won Worlds last year, even though they're the LPL number 3 seed. People still recognize that this is a really, really good team. I know we'll talk about this a little bit when we get to Group B, but for whatever reason, the word in the LPL community is that the seeding that they are at Worlds doesn't necessarily reflect where people believe they'll actually place in terms of who's actually the best.
well, and we also mentioned this a little bit earlier, but the LPL has depth, right? And if I'm gonna have faith in their fourth seed, I may as well also have faith in their third seed, right? It's not like don't get me wrong, my pick'ems are pure hopium for NA, so my pick'ems wouldn't necessarily accurately depict uh, how good I think the teams are. But when I'm thinking about are these teams good and will they get out? Obviously, you need to point to T1 and EDG getting out of this group. Now, my pick'ems on the other hand,
Okay,
my pick'ems has
speaking of pick'ems, what are your pick'ems? Let's let the world know.
yeah, yeah, I got T1 number 1. Of course, I put Cloud9 number 2, and then I put EDG and then Fnatic. And yeah, again, if you wanna get mad at me for being biased, I don't care, get mad. NA Hopium, let's fucking go.
Yeah, for my pick'ems, I did T1 number 1, EDG number 2, Cena number 3, Fnatic number 4.
So
And
you went full, try hard, should I say? You didn't give
yeah,
Hopium even as a Cloud9 fan?
okay, maybe this is a bit of a superstition, but every time that Cloud9 has made it out of groups, my pick'ems have Cloud9 not making it out of groups. And the one time
Ah.
I had them making it out of groups, I did it in Season 9 when they were in the group with Griffin and G2, and they got absolutely fisted.
Hmm.
So maybe this is a
So
superstition
you're
of
doing your best to get them through the group
no.
stage,
Well,
is what
I'm
it
doing
sounds
what I'm
like.
normally doing, which is thinking that they're not going to make it out because guess
Yeah,
what? They probably don't make it out on the
doing your
majority of
part.
cases. But hey, they find a way.
It is crazy how often they do find a way. But that's, I mean, yeah, I'd be lying if I said that I put them number 2 because I think they're going to find a way. I don't believe that just because they've done it in the past, that means that they'll do it again. I literally put them there because NA Hopium. That's, I'll admit.
Yeah, and if we want to get a little realistic here, the only way that Cloud9 is really going to be able to contend with T1 and EDG is if they're playing at that same level as they did in the summer playoffs. Because if we see the Cloud9 that we saw for the majority of the summer split, they are not going to do very well at this World Championship. However,
Right.
if we see the fucking Zoomer Berserker, Jensen, who's playing like a world class mid laner and always does at international events, and a high level non-inting Blabber, which we didn't necessarily see for the entirety of the summer split, but as the split went on towards the end of the regular season and throughout the entire playoffs, Blabber was playing really, really well. And let's just say that this jungle meta might not necessarily be his meta in terms of the champions that are in it, and it might have to come down to his decision making, which always hasn't been the greatest thing to rely on, because to me, I see the jungle meta definitely shifting sort of tank oriented. I'm expecting a lot of Vi, a lot of Maokai, throw some Sejuani in there. Maybe we even get some Jarvan in there at some point, but I'm not really expecting this to be like a Lee Sin, Olaf, carry type jungler
I could
meta.
see Vi being great for him though, for Blabber. Like he's a I'm going in YOLO kind of guy. That's what Vi does.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
honestly,
maybe.
the Hecarim too, right? There's a lot of people playing Hecarim.
I don't know.
There's debate.
I'm not high on that champion at
I
all.
was
It
just
looks
about to
like dog
say
shit.
I was just about to say there's debate about how good Hecarim is, but clearly teams have thought that this champion is good enough to pick because we've seen it a few times, and that's another champion that Blabber plays pretty well. So um, just because we haven't seen it have the most success does not mean that Blabber will not have success on it. That guy's played Olaf a million times when it's not meta and looked like an absolute monster. So you don't necessarily always have to play meta
Well,
to win games.
and I think, well, if we want to talk about those kind of comps, specifically if Cloud9 is going to run them, I think with the state that we're in right now, you have to design your comps around those champions. I think on the Hecarim point, people are kind of just, or at the beginning, people just viewed Hecarim as, we pick Hecarim because he's OP. No, I don't really think that's the case. I think you need to sort of comp around Hecarim a little bit. Looks really, really well when paired up with the Seraphine in either the mid or the bot lane, preferably the bot lane. That was sort of the Mad Lions strategy that we saw pretty early on in the play-in tournament. They just picked, I think it was 3 of their 5 games. They played Seraphine bot with Hecarim. Maybe it was two out of the 5 games. But I think that pairing works really, really well. Obviously, Cloud9 plays Zillion. That is a
I
massive
was just
champion
about to
for
bring that up.
that's a massive, pick for champions like Olaf and Hecarim. Should Blabber want to play those? We saw, I mean, Inspired played Lee Sin in their 3rd game today. Lee Sin did get buffed before Worlds. However, I think that was the first Lee Sin game we actually saw in the whole play-in tournament was that game 3 against EG Mad
Was it
Lions. So
really?
I don't think I remember seeing the champion get picked. I'll double check here right now, but
I thought we had seen it. And regardless, you took the words right out of my mouth with the Zillion thing because I could totally see a world where Blabber locks in Olaf and has Zillion just to go ape shit. I could totally see that world. And who knows, right? Things could change. Metas adapt as worlds goes on, right?
okay,
Like what we're seeing now could be very different from what we're gonna see 2-3 weeks from now.
okay. Well, apparently Lee Sin's been picked 5 times. I guess I haven't been paying attention, but
That's what I thought it had been picked. That's really funny.
okay,
Anyway,
whatever.
I don't want to go too far deep into the groups because there's not been any games yet. So I'd like to move on to Group B. But do you have anything else that you want to say on Group A before I just cut you off?
No, I think Group A is. I mean, obviously, me being a Cloud9 fan, Group A is going to be exciting. But I think just the way the group is and the teams that are involved, I think this will probably be the most competitive group in terms of first place and last place. Like, the gap won't be massive.
Gotcha. I mean, we've said that before, right? TSM
Yeah,
06.
true. Yeah,
Anyway,
literally copy paste of that group from
yeah,
2020.
this is gonna be the most competitive group. Anyone could beat anyone. TSM 06. 9-man sleep. Okay, Group B.
Yep, Group B.
It's not
Um,
up on my screen yet. You talk.
okay, it is. For whatever reason, I guess is this an alphabet? No, this isn't even alphabetical order. But The graphic has this one wrong in comparison to the Group A one. I saw this
I
off
was gonna
Lolly
ask if
Sports
this was
Twitter.
your pick'ems that we have on screen.
No,
Okay.
these would definitely not be my pick'ems. However, Group B, JDG, LPL number 1 seed, G2, EU number 2 seed, DAM 1, LCK number 3 seed, and then EG made it out of the playing stage, obviously as the 4th seed in this group. We've been talking a lot about EG. Unfortunately, they've been drawn into the consensus group of death this year at the World Championship, having a JDG, the number 1 LPL team, G2, who people view as the best European team, regardless of the finals performance against Rogue for whatever reason, and then Dam1, who is just, they may not have been the best team in the LCK for the majority of 2022, but when you have Showmaker and Canyon on your team, anything can happen.
That's my biggest issue. So again, just my pick'ems. I went JDG, then EG, then Dam1, then G2. Yes, I know. Full hopium. If I'm looking at it from like which teams I actually think as far as skill order, I would then go JDG, then Dam1, then G2, then EG. And
That's
the
what I had
reason
my
why
pick'ems as.
and the reason why is because I can't get by. Like, I know that Damwon is not the same team that won Worlds just a couple years ago. But you just mentioned the two players that I can't get out of my mind when I think about this team and how much they take over the game, right? Like, I still think Showmaker is an absolute monster, and I just can't get past that to actually say that they are not a contender for Worlds anymore to win the championship. And so even though I don't have the moving on in my pick'ems because my pick'ems are full XD and a Hopium,
Well,
I
not
think that
full.
this team, yeah, nearly full. I still can't, just ignore the strength of this team, I guess, and say that they should get out of the group. I guess is what I'm saying in short.
Yeah, I guess the one unknown is I don't know if we know what the top lane situation for Dam 1 is. They were playing both Nuggery and Birdall in the LCK Summer Playoffs, to the surprise of many, because Birdall seems like he's bad. I don't know. I've never been impressed with that guy when we saw him at Worlds last year on Gen G and even during the LCK Spring Split, because I've watched a ton of LCK in spring, not as much in the summer, but didn't look very good. So I don't know what the deal is with the top lane situation, but what I do know is if one of them is struggling, they'll probably make a substitution.
Yeah, I'm interested to watch this team because I didn't watch a lot of LCK this year, and so I'm really interested to see where the skepticism has come from, because is it just as simple as, oh, they're not hard smashing all of their games anymore, so people don't think they're that good, or is there actually some areas to point to where it's like, no, this guy clearly is worse than he was before? And so that's kind of what I'll keep my like. This team is one of the teams that I'll really have my eye on outside of course, the North American.
Mhm. And obviously, we got a G2 versus EG once again. We had them up against each other at MSI. EG didn't look very great against G2 for the most part, but they get a chance to have their revenge after taking out
Revenge
Mad Lions.
opportunities.
But I'm not going to lie here. This is looking 06able for EG.
Really? I mean,
Yeah.
I could totally see why you say that, right? Like, it's not out of the realm of possibility. Um,
I
and I think it's still fair to say that it's more likely this EG team goes 0-6 in this group than the TSM 0-6 when they were in the group. I mean, we obviously know how that turned out in the end, so lol. But yeah, I think the 0-6 is more likely in this one, despite the fact that I don't think it will happen. I still do not think. I think people continue to put G2 up there as far as like the G2 of old, where they were a legit worlds contender, like team to win worlds. And while I don't think it's impossible for them to win worlds, I think they're far less of a contender than they were in years past. The only guy to me that still seems at the top of his game is Caps. But even Caps, I still don't think is as good as he was in what was it, 2019 when they went to finals.
yeah, I mean,
It was 2019.
I'll throw him a bit of
Despite the fact that he's still an absolute monster, though, like I still recognize that, but I do think that we've seen him better in the past. That's all.
yeah. I mean, I pretty much agree with your point there. The one bone that I will throw them that I guess I do disagree with is I think Broken Blade has the kind of style that is really successful at the World Championship, having a very wide champion pool, playing a lot
Yeah,
of carry champions, and willing
and he had a
to
great split too. To
yeah,
be fair,
and
yeah,
willing to take the a counterpick aggressive matchups that are high risk high reward. He's to me he's one of those Western players that will take the Jax or the Fiora or the Camille into a blind pick Aatrox and, play it as a skill matchup and basically say, I'm going to beat you because I'm better. And I don't think there's a lot of Western players that you can really say that about. The other one will be Caps, who is on G2, and I do agree with you. He's still looking like he is at the top of his game, at least what we saw in the summer split. But I just think G2 and EG are going to be fighting an uphill battle here because JDG, they're looking really good. Obviously, the number one LPL team. You got to put a lot of stock into that just in general because of the strength of the LPL and the way that they design their playoffs. And, maybe it's just some like a bit of bias here or just some LCK hopium, but I just think that Damwon is, I just can't like bet against them really. I don't know. Feels hard to.
Yeah, no, I think it's fair to say this is the group of death, especially for EG. They're in a tough spot because let's be real, all three of the teams in their group are better than them.
Yep.
But the better team does not always win, and especially in best of ones. And so that's why I'm giving the EG and a Hopium angle. Group C?
Yep. In Group C, we had once again not in order. Don't know why. All esports, you're cringe. First up is Rogue, who's the number one LEC team. Then Top Esports, LPL number 2 team, followed by the Gigamite Marines, the number 1 seed out of the VCS, and then DRX slotting in there after getting first seed in the playing Group B. Now, speaking of the group of death, this is the group of life because I guess I would say it's a group of life because the Gigabyte Marines are a huge wild card in this situation. We haven't seen the VCS at international, or sorry, I should say we haven't seen the Gigabyte Marines at international competition since 2019. They are pretty much the sole reason why the VCS has really been featured in the World Championship and at MSI now. Them getting 2 seeds along with the PCS are the only teams that have 2, as opposed to 1 for the minor regions and 3 or more for all the major regions. And, there's just, to me, seems like a lot of solid teams. I don't think that, Top Esports is obviously the team that everyone seems to be talking about as the favorite in terms of the LPL fans out there. Because they all, for whatever reason, I'm just saying what I'm hearing because I haven't watched any LPL at all. I've just watched highlights of some of the playoff matches, but everybody still says that Top Esports is the best team. And part of that is because Tian is looking really, really good. Jackalev's looking really, really good. Knight is looking really, really good. And those are obviously their 3 best players and 3 players that you want to be at the top of their game going into the World Championship. However, Rogue, they had a bit of a glow up in the LEC because they are looking really, really good. And, I think...
Did you see my pick'ems already?
I saw your pick'ems. You want to let the people know? You want to let the people know?
Yeah, I put Rogue number 1, then Top Esports, then DRX, and then GAM. Okay, I'm in the same boat as you. I just, for full disclosure here, I did not watch LPL. So feel free to flame me for not watching 4 major leagues or whatever. I was really, really impressed with how much better Rogue's bot lane got as the split went on because I watched all of the LEC games in the first, I don't know, like 7 weeks of LEC or whatever, and I was really not too impressed with their bot lane. Now, I didn't think their bot lane was horrendous or anything, but to me, that was clearly the weak spot of this team. And then when playoffs came around, I was incredibly impressed with their bot lane. And so that is enough for me to give EU some points of hopium. If I'm going to give it to NA, I feel like I should give it to EU as well because I think this team looked, I don't know, their trajectory is on the way up. So I went, you know what? I'll give EU a number 1 spot. Upsets happen all the freaking time at World, so why the hell not?
Yeah, for my pick'ems, I did Top Esports 1, DRX 2, Rogue 3, Gigabyte Marines 4. Honestly, I feel like I'm still on the fence with Rogue and DRX, mainly because I was super impressed with Rogue's summer playoffs. However, maybe a bit of recency bias seeing Damwon. DRX just smash everybody in plans and all of their players looking really, really good, especially ones who you wouldn't have expected to look really good, specifically their solo laners of Zika and Kingen, which are 2 of the more lesser known players on their squad. So, I don't know. I'm not really exactly sure where I fall with this group. The one things that I do know is I'm putting Top Esports number 1 and I'm putting Gigabyte Marines number 4. However, to me, this feels like the group that is just going to be all over the fucking place. This feels like the group, what was it?
Of life?
Well, yeah, I guess group of life. We said that at the beginning, but it just to me feels like, with the pick'ems, you might feel confident about, whatever. I feel like this is going to be the one where pretty much everybody's got it wrong, and the people who had flipped the coin are going to be the ones who get it right.
So that's kind of the reason why I went with Rogue is because I do think that this group is really open. Also, I hit the flip the coin button just to see what happens. It gives you a warning. Did you see that? If
Yeah,
you
you
hit
can't
flip
take
the
it
coin,
back.
it's like you can't change this after.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why not? What if I want to flip the coin 6 times and then lock it in? Like, I don't know. Anyways, um, I thought that was silly. But I don't have much more to add to this group. I don't need to bullshit anyone. I have not watched most of these regions, so
Yeah, I would just say I know I pointed out in the mid laners for Group A, obviously because there's some storyline behind that. But Group C, the fucking junglers in this group are all cracked as hell. I mean, Tian,
ooh.
Pioshik, Malrang,
Now,
and
didn't
Levi.
Tion
Like,
have wrist issues last year?
yes, but apparently
Yeah.
those
So,
aren't as prominent. I guess
right, and my point in bringing that up is because I think that was a big part to them just absolutely collapsing last year.
them being
Um,
FPX for the people who didn't remember.
yeah, thank you for that clarification. So that's one thing that I think is important to point out. If you're thinking, well, they just bombed out of Worlds last year and Tian looked like shit. Yes, but he was struggling with wrist issues at the time. And I think that obviously I think that that is really, really going to influence your gameplay. So that's just something that I want to say is like if you're expecting them to collapse because they did last year, I think it's apples and oranges the story. Unless of course maybe he's having wrist issues again, but no reason to believe that that's happening at this point in time.
Hmm.
Okay, Group D.
Yep, we got Group D now. We have Genji, the number one LCK team, CTB. Jesus, I'm gonna butcher this every time. CTBC Flying Oyster, the number one seed out of the PCS, followed by 100 Thieves, the second seed from the LCS, and then RNG slotting in as the fourth seed after beating EFM today.
Yep,
Um,
I'll just get my pickums out on the table. I went Genji number 1, RNG number 2, then 100 Thieves number 3, and the Flying Oysters number 4. Now, I have not ever watched a Flying Oysters game, full disclosure. People might be like, why are you full hopium for Cloud9 and not for EG? This simply goes back to the finals. I remember saying going into the finals that I didn't really see too many holes in the lineups of the players. And I was partially wrong on that because even though I didn't think the players necessarily underperformed, I guess you could say Abadage did. So that was one worry that I had from the last time we watched him. Abadage looked a lot like he did at the start of summer when he was really struggling, which we hadn't seen for quite some time. So that to me really came out of left field and was a problem. But the main problem that I have with 100 Thieves the last time we saw them is they didn't have any other answers outside of just, well, honestly, really sad drafts. Honestly, the Nami Lucian didn't really seem to do anything, and they didn't have any other answers. And I remember we talked about that. And then the episode of Hotline League the following week, I believe, came out. And it was, God, I could picture his face, Max Waldo on there saying like we knew all of their bands and like just knowing exactly what they were going to, and that to me is the hole that I think I missed when judging this team is you need to be able to draft different things and you cannot be predictable, especially on the world stage. And until I see them being able to whip out different strategies and different things that they have success with, I have a hard time saying this team's going to move on. So I guess I ran out of the NA hopium for 100 Thieves. um, but that doesn't mean I like this team any less than the other two NA teams. It's just I'm a lot more worried for them.
yeah, I had my pickums as the exact same thing. Um, my main, I guess, the only discussion or thoughts that I had in my head was just if I was going to put 100 Thieves either third or fourth. And I landed on putting them third primarily just because of the LCS's track record against the PCS slash LMS historically at the World Championship and at other various international events. And I don't know, I guess I'm just kind of working on the assumption that the second best North American team is going to be better than the first placed PCS team. And that's really about it because I haven't watched any PCS. I don't even know anybody even on this roster. So I have no idea,
That makes two of us.
but they have a cool name, so maybe they can win a game or two.
And Gen G, are they your pick to win the whole tournament?
Yep. I picked Genji as my pick 'em to win the whole dang thing.
Mm. I don't even know if I've gotten to that part yet.
I'm pretty
Like, are you talking about
sure.
the pick'ems thing?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I forgot. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I forgot I did, yeah. Which team will win Worlds? I did go Genji. I forgot about that.
Hmm.
Yeah, so me too. Okay, I don't have anything else to add. I think we'll have a lot more to say once there's games to talk about. Is there anything you want to add, JNT?
So I think that's it.
All right, let's get to quick news then.
Yeah, we got some quick news. First thing, biggest thing. I mean, maybe not the biggest thing for right now, but the preseason 2023 not notes because they're not patch notes, but
It's a big thing though. Like I think it's fair to call it a big thing. Anytime you're changing the game, which they
yeah.
pretty much do every preseason for the most part, I think that's pretty big. It's going to change how the game is played in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
Um I guess I'll start with the pings thing. A lot of people are like, "Why do we need these pings?" I think the pings are good.
Wait, people are
The only
saying that? Why do we need the pings? Pings are great. We need more
I mean,
pings.
well, to be fair, I think the biggest issue for me anyways is the pings are cool. In-game comms would be better.
Oh yeah, I mean
I've
obviously.
continued I've continued to say that always. I can't believe you can't add in-game comms with this fucking game. I don't know what the reason is. Is it they're afraid people are going to be toxic? People are toxic regardless.
People are equally as toxic in Valorant.
That too. Like you have another game with open comms. Now I know people are going to say, "Well, you need comms in Valorant." Sure, I would argue that you need them in League as well. People have just thought that you don't really need them because we've gone so many years without them. I feel like if there was comms in League and people then took them away, I think people would be losing their minds. I think it's just that the game was made without comms, and so people have kind of just gotten used to it. But I would argue that comms are tremendously important in League of Legends, and I don't think you need to ping all this different shit when you could just talk to someone. But hey, that's me.
Yeah, stop being cringe adcoms.
What else stood out to you, J&T, in the
I
preseason
mean,
stuff?
yeah, the main thing that the majority of people were talking about was the various jungle changes that they're making, but specifically
Mhm.
in terms of the what's the correct word I should go for? The extra tools that you will have as a jungler, especially for newer junglers, in terms of them changing the mechanics of the leashing on the jungles and also providing recommended paths for whatever champion you're playing, camp timers. I think they're adding like exact camp timers for everything or something like that. Maybe that was just, I don't know if that's exactly true, but I know that that was talked about a lot with regards to it. But a lot of people, for whatever reason, seem to be upset about the whole situation with Riot continuing to dumb down the jungle role for newer players, and in my opinion, newer players only. Because if you play jungle, you kind of know what you're doing. And one of the problems that Riot's always talked about is it's very difficult to get new players involved in the jungle role. And I think that making it easier and more, I don't want to say more accessible because that's not what it is, but just
It's kind of
understandable
more accessible,
more
especially for new players.
understandable to the average player or a new player. I think that definitely helps. But at the same time, I'm also a believer in, when it comes to the jungle specifically, a lot of the skill expression in the role comes down to your pathing and your ability to read the map and then communicate with your team based on what you're reading on the map. And I think they're kind of, for whatever reason, seem to be going away with that, with adding these recommended paths and changing the leashing on jungle camps to where you cannot double jungle anymore. And when I say double jungle, I don't mean like the old double jungling where two champions would walk around double jungling. It's where you're killing two camps at once. They're pretty much removing that, which I think was a really cool mechanic for experienced junglers to show some of their skills. Like that's a common thing on a champ like Fiddlesticks, Kindred. I know people do it where you're constantly getting the talisman healing. People do it on Evelyn. Bunch of champions where it's super super useful, and you can almost do double jungling with the blue and the gromp on literally any champion in the game. So I don't know. It just seems that Riot is dumbing down the jungle role, and I think that's going to hurt at higher skill levels. But it'll definitely be better for the average player, which is the majority of the player base. So it's
Yeah,
just it's just a balancing act of we got to make the game popular and enjoyable for everybody while not truly ruining the experience of all the better players and older players.
I'm a little bit stuck in between old man boomer blue jay take here and just whatever take. The old man boomer blue jay take is, well, back in my day, I just went into the jungle with a moo and started whacking camps with my head. And like, so you should have to learn it that way too. Then I think about like, is it really gonna matter that much that they're recommending a jungle path for players? Like you kind of mentioned it. If you're a jungler, you kind of know what you're doing anyways. And for the people that don't, whatever, give them a hand, you know? They'll figure out how to do some jungle path. Like, I don't think it really affects um the level of play at high elo, which is like, I don't know, that's where games start to matter a lot more, right? Like, does it matter that much in like a gold game if someone else is if someone is helped with their pathing? I think 2 gold junglers would be more than happy to have some more information, even if the other jungler got information as well. And I think that's what you're getting here. And then at higher elos, they're just like, I don't need this fucking thing to tell me where to path. I'll know where to go. So I just think it's a win, honestly, in the end. I think it'll help you newer players, which I think newer players need some help. That's great. And the higher elo players don't need it, and they'll just ignore the whatever. And I think it's that simple.
Yeah, the other thing with the jungle obviously is the jungle pets that they're adding. Honestly, I have no fucking clue what they are
I
at
was gonna
all.
ask you what that is.
I
I
literally have no idea, so I can't even talk about it. But
Okay.
it just seems like, from my baseline understanding of what it is, they just turned, like, in the old jungle where you would buy a specific jungle item, where it was like you buy the blue jungle item, which was AP, you buy the
Yeah.
the green one, which was the tank one, you buy the red one, which was
Cinder
the
Hulk.
AD one. Yeah, it just feels
Yeah.
like they're creating little pet versions of those, because I read the thing and it says, like, you buy the green one, or I don't even know if it's the green one, the Noxian Ember Cat, whatever the fuck that is. Just says
Are they
this will
purely
be the pet of,
cosmetic though?
no, it says this will be the pet of choice for junglers looking to play more aggressively. It will provide slows and bonus damage. Then this other
Oh.
one, which I'm going to assume is the green one based on it being Ixal. This jungle pet is perfect
See,
for junglers looking to frontline and tank. So I think it just, for whatever reason, they're adding like the AP, tank, AD kind of style mini buffs back into the jungle, which they already had previously
oh.
with the items. That's what it seems like to me. Like, because
See,
it
now
one's
that seems way
one's.
more game altering than the pings or than the jungle pathing or anything like that.
I mean, they change the jungle every fucking year, so obviously they're
Yeah,
going to
but I'm
change the
just
jungle.
saying,
But
like, all the conversation I've seen is that Riot's dumbing the game down too much, and that's fine if that's your take, but I haven't seen nearly any discussion about the pet stuff, and this sounds to be way more influential.
yeah, but I mean, it's not like, I mean, it's probably like, I mean, one
It's
thing
not
that's
that
shitty
influential?
is, well, I don't know. I don't think it's gonna be like massive, like, oh, I got this pet, I'm dealing 500 more damage. It's just like, it's your little bonus that you get.
Okay. I mean, we'll see.
Yeah.
I don't know much about it, and I guess neither do you by the sounds of things. So
Yeah.
I guess we'll just have to wait and see.
The other notable thing is they're adding a bunch of items and changing a lot with some of the previous items that they added within the item rework. The most notable thing is tank items are getting a big rework. The 3 tank mythics of Sunfire, Iceborne, and Chemtank are no longer mythic items, and they're
Ooh.
actually adding a bunch of other tank mythic items or changing existing legendary tank items to mythic items. They're also adding back Praise the Lord's Rod of Ages and Iceborne Gauntlet.
Hmm.
I fucking loved both of those items. Holy shit, thank God they're back. But this is all stuff that it's fun to talk about now, but we have no fucking idea how good or bad they're going to be until you actually play the game when preseason hits. So I
Yeah.
think preseason's going to be good. I like the item changes a lot. I
I don't
couldn't
have anything
really,
else to add, really.
yeah, I couldn't really give a fuck about the pings or anything like that. Like, dude, just add comms. I don't even care. Like, now I just have more ways that I'm just going to get annoyingly pinged by my teammates who don't know what the hell they're doing.
Oh, one thing I will actually that I should say is I like the voting on the drag thing.
Oh
Like,
yeah,
hey, you guys
actually,
want
oh
to do drag?
true. Yeah, that's
I think
actually
that's
good.
good. Yeah.
There's so many situations where I'm like fucking spam pinging dragon, like, because
Did
I'm
you
watching. I'm like, yo, this is a free ass dragon. Let's come take it bot lane, but they're jerking themselves off in lane, and then
did you
then I go
see
die to the enemy jungler who's ulting on me, and their mid laner comes down, and my mid laner forgets to ping, and he's just hitting a wave, and I'm just out to fucking lunch.
did you see Meteos and his take on it? He doesn't like the voting at all.
Oh
But
no, what did he say?
during the one game there somebody in the thing, it was either Sneaky or Doublift, was like, they should go take drag here. And Meteos like, do you think they're gonna vote on it? I thought that was I thought that was so funny, man. Holy shit. It was the live viewings were freaking hysterical today, man.
Yeah,
Oh
today
my
they were
god, they were
funny.
so funny. It makes me wonder, like, they should just do live viewings for all the regular season games, honestly. If Riot's not gonna let them co-stream it, they should still do the live viewings. I don't know why. I remember the first times they did one, I felt like it wasn't that good. It's felt fine to me this time around. I don't know what's changed. Do you get that impression?
I don't know. I think one thing that Doublelift said not even this time, but before when he was considering doing it for MSI this year, was that he didn't know if he was going to be like as comfortable or know what the feel or how different it was going to be, not actually watching the game or not having the game on the screen. And to me, it just seemed like it was a little bit awkward on the first day, but then they just found their groove and it was pretty much the same thing. So
Yeah, that's kind of how it felt to me. But anyways, we got other quick news to get to.
yeah,
I
this
think the
is
coach
this
streams are
is
whatever they
definitely
are.
not quick news today, but
Yeah, it's never
uh,
been quick.
yeah,
When has
next
quick news ever been quick?
a couple times maybe, but
Okay.
we have some Champions Queue stuff to talk about. Obviously, Champions Queue has pretty much been the feature of Twitter and Reddit when the World Championship games are not going on. I was going through the top posts on the league subreddit to get some info for today, and literally the first 9 pages are just all like Champions Queue stuff. If it's not like Worlds groups, playing stage results, it's just Champions Queue highlights. Like, oh, Faker fucking outplay. Oh, Gumayushi outplay. Oh, Berserker outplay. Like, I mean, it's just really fun that we're seeing all these players in these high level games in North
What was
America.
like the drama though? What was like the issues that people are having?
Yeah, so obviously with all the world's players being in North America and playing on the Champions Queue server, there's been a lot of talk for whatever reason, primarily from people that aren't in Champions Queue, saying how it's so bad that there are bad players in Champions Queue. I say bad, quote unquote, players, and they're going to be your amateur and academy players who are definitely not on the same level as even the LCS players, let alone the professional EU, LPL, and LCK players who are just miles ahead of them. And there was some even more talk about the restrictions for players being able to come to North America to play in Champions Queue. Nemesis made a video on it where he was denied. He was planning on coming to North America to play in Champions Queue, but was denied because he wasn't on an active team from a different region. Cadril, who's going to be casting the event, obviously he's still a pretty active solo queue player. He's a challenger level player. Wanted to play in it, got denied because he's not on an active team, and kind of just the decision making. People seem to be calling into question the decision making in terms of who gets in and who is not in for the Champions Queue server. But regardless of all that, I mean, the Champions Queue games have been fantastic, and there's been so many like high viewer streams from casters and players just showing these games off. Because when are you ever going to see 6 LPL LCK pros going up against 4 other NAEU pros?
Yeah, to me, like it's actually so good that you have this. I remember before it happened, like when they announced that world teams were going to be able to play Champions Queue, there was so many people with the take of like, oh, these pros aren't even going to use it, and I'm like, have you seen how much people complain about NA solo queue? I think they're going to use it. Now, I could be wrong, right? Things like we're only like a week into Worlds, right? So things could change. Players might get upset with it or whatever, and decide I'm done with Champions Queue. I just don't see that happening personally. I don't see how you can say I would rather play against NA one tricks, no offense to guys like Antibot or whatever, than play against actual guys from the other teams. Like I don't see a world where that makes any sense. Wouldn't you obviously want to play Champions Queue? I don't know. Maybe it's just me.
Yeah, but I guess one last thing to point out with that is they moved the servers already back to Chicago because obviously the teams who were not in the playing stage are already in New York and have been joining the Champions League server over the last couple of days, so they've been moved back to the towards the East
Yeah.
Coast. So presumably the players who are still in Mexico were playing on a bit higher ping, but obviously they're all going to be in New York now. Next up, speaking of New York, there's been a lot of talk this past week with the world's venue and the setups, and Travis Gafford even made a video with regards to the purchasing tickets experience in terms of what Riot has done on their side in terms of advertising and the actual methods of purchasing tickets and the whole process not being
Mhm.
as good as it can be in his opinion.
Yeah, I think the video that Travis released, if you somehow haven't seen it but you're watching this, I highly recommend going to watch that video. Uh, I think it's more for people that are attending Worlds, but to me, it just felt like he was so right on with the experience that we've had with Worlds so far, and we haven't even gone yet. But getting tickets was fucking cancer because first of all, the ticket information only came out like a month ago, so it came out like before Worlds. That's a huge issue. You didn't know how much it was going to cost. You're just waiting, hoping that you're not having to pay an arm and a leg, which, by the way, the prices were still pretty damn expensive. And all this to say that I think so far Riot is failing with Worlds, honestly. Um, because I think that obviously that's a joke, the ticket information stuff, but that's something that's been happening for a while. The other thing is I still don't really know why they even went to Mexico, honestly. And I know this is kind of like a copy paste take from Travis, but I think he's so spot on. Like it was such a tiny ass little venue. Could you imagine, Jinter, if they announced that they were coming to like I mean, you no longer live in Ontario, but let's say they did announce that they're coming to Toronto, which I know they did, but and then they came to Toronto only for a venue that has like 100 or 200 seats. I'd be so mad. I'd be like, "What the fuck did you even come here for, man? Fans can't even get in. There's like no access barely. You got a bunch of people fighting over probably what is like a few tickets, and so that makes no sense to me either. So I don't really get any of that.
Yeah, the venue just seemed really, it literally just looked like the LCS studio in terms of the capacity. It just looked like only a few hundred people were there.
I will say that I thought the venue looked really nice. I just thought it looked really small, right? Like the players were crammed in, and I don't remember if it
Yeah,
was
there was even
who made the tweet that was like, "I'm
humanoid,
crammed
you
in here, and
said.
my face is right in front of the."
It
Yeah,
was humanoid, you said it was, right?
I can't remember.
Yeah, but what we're talking about, if you don't know, is like some of the players were kind of, I wouldn't say complaining, but they were passive aggressively talking about the setups for the actual games that they were playing in terms of them being really small and not having like a lot of space in their given, spot of the desk or spot of the station.
And you were specifically on the site buying tickets. You want to give your 2 cents about what that was like?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, obviously, the ticketing information is a joke, releasing all the dates and everything like less than less than, I don't even know when it was. It was like a month and a week before the start of the event. But like, even you gotta like release this information like 3 months out at least to give
Yeah.
fans and everyone else the chance to plan, book, flights, hotels, anything. It just, to me, for me, I'm not gonna lie, it's super easy for me. I now live in the area, so I'm only like a 20-minute, train slash subway ride away from downtown New York City. So for me, it's not a
Mhm.
problem. But for somebody who's living abroad, like outside of the United States, I could see how difficult that is. Not knowing when you need to take time off. Having to book your hotels and your flights at a way later date than normal. Obviously, going to be more expensive. And in my position, luckily, I had a Mastercard, so the buying the tickets was pretty easy for me
Mhm.
because if you had a Mastercard, you basically got like a 2 day jump on the rest of everybody else for ticket sales. So I was able to get mine pretty early on, so it made it somewhat easy for me. But I'm a person who didn't have to deal with the complications of finding transportation, getting a place to stay, worrying about if I'm going to be able to get into these ticket sales because I was lucky enough to have a Mastercard. But I could just, for me, it just, if I was in that situation, I'd just be so pissed because if I'm not as fortunate to have the situation that I'm in, like it just would be so shit.
It's really fucking annoying. But the you might be wondering why the fuck are these guys bringing this up if this is everything Travis said in his video, and you're kind of right about that. But there's two things that I think I need to add on to this. One, if we've seen it be scuffed so far, I don't think we're done with seeing scuffed ass shit, and it makes me worried for what happens in New York, or in Atlanta, or at finals for that matter. But two, what I would say to people that are going to Worlds is don't let the Riot scuffed shit ruin the event for you. Because I think at the end of the day, it is still a League Worlds event in North America. And I think even though I could totally see the venue being absolutely trash when we go to New York and we go to groups, I don't think that we should let it take away from what the event actually is, because this is like a once in a decade kind of opportunity, right? Like I realize that Worlds was in North America, what was it, 6 years ago? So you might say 1 in 6, but they're not going to be back for quite some time. And the other thing too is you don't always know where in North America they're going to go, right? Because North America is so fucking massive that maybe you don't get access to, like, I don't know, let's say you're in Atlanta, for example. If they come back to Worlds again in, I don't know, 5 6 years, are they going to be in Atlanta or anywhere near? Probably not. So what I would say is, if this is a once in a decade event for you, don't let the scuffed shit stop you from enjoying it, because I think this will be absolutely insane, especially for people that have never been to a league event. So what I would say is expect scuff and don't have high expectations, but enjoy what the event is and enjoy the fact that you get to go see maybe an NA team play at Worlds perhaps. And I think that in itself is enough for me to get really fucking hyped for it.
Yeah, I mean, we're both going, so it's gonna be a lot of fun.
Oh, I'm so excited. I can't fucking wait, man. I'm so fired up. But anyways,
Yeah,
that's why I think I wanted to bring up because I think first of all, Travis is dead on with pretty much everything he said, but I don't want everyone to just be all negative on the event itself and rather just complain because there's a lot of cool things that happens with an event such as this.
yeah,
Um, but I'm
100%.
done.
It's
I'm
gonna
done.
be it's gonna be sick. We
Yeah.
got a couple non-worlds things to quickly go over. First up, on the NA side of things, Neo, 80 carry of Dignitas, is not on Dignitas anymore. Looks like he's gonna be free
Mhm.
agent, as well as Leader, whatever the hell you want us to
Leader,
call him, on Golden
leader.
Guardians, their mid laner or Academy mid laner, but he did play in the LCS a little bit. Not on Golden Guardians anymore. So if I had to guess, it's back to Academy for Neo, and it's back to EU Masters or EU Regional Leagues for Leader.
The only thing so I don't wanna talk long about this stuff. The only thing that makes me and this leans into one of the other ones, the only thing that that I recognize with the leader move is that Inero, who just got promoted to be the GM, that's the other quick news, like, I guess by him being promoted and leader being let go, I'm guessing it wasn't his move to get leader in the first place.
Yeah.
It seems like that must have it seems like all the moves that were made this year have to be on Danon because they let him go.
Mhm.
Just guessing though, of course.
Yep. But then we got a couple EU things really quickly.
Mhm.
Carzy, who's on Vitality, is still under contract with Vitality, but he's allowed to explore his options for 2023. And we said it before, but we all know what exploring options
Yeah.
means when it comes to Professional League of Legends. It means you're out on the fucking street.
Yeah, it means go and explore options somewhere that's not here. That's
Yeah.
usually what that means. Which is interesting anytime you hear of a super team, air quote,
Yeah.
uh, player being let go. I mean, we know that the team ended up disastrously not even making playoffs, so we're not surprised, but it is still interesting nonetheless. And what was the other thing?
Well, last up, some further updates slash news on the Astralis situation, because as we all know, Astralis is looking to sell their spot, and it's been rumored for many months now that that spot is going to be going to Caramine Corp, which is the big LFL team. Pretty much has the biggest social media following in Europe for League of Legends. That's not Fnatic or G2. So I think everybody's hoping that they join the league just because they're such a big name brand and they're going to bring the type of money and passion and fans that is wanted and necessary for a league to survive. Especially, Europe used to only be it's Fnatic and G2, and now there's Fnatic G2, there's Mad Lions, there's Rogue. Maybe people thought there was Vitality this past year. Caramine Corp coming in, they're going to spend a shit ton of money if they do get into the league, hopefully, and there'll be
There's
a lot
some
of
good
fun.
LEC brands.
Oh, for sure. But
Now, one thing I want to ask you, do you know, I don't know if you'll know anything about this, but I thought I heard a rumor that one of the issues that they're having is that K Corp doesn't have that much money.
yeah, so the whole thing, there's a hey, we're not experts on this shit. So what I go recommend is go check out LEC Lulu, and he made a Reddit post about this, and I think it's also on his Twitter, and he has like a full breakdown of all this stuff. But I'll just read off some of the important ones. First up, because Caramine Corp acquired a Valorant slot for the VCT League, they are apparently running low on cash, which is preventing them from buying the spot from Astralis. And now the latest word is that they might potentially loan the spot to KC. So Astralis might loan the spot for the year to KC before they actually buy it, which would potentially be the year after. So,
So it could be like waiting, like I guess what might happen is K Corp doesn't have the money right now, so they're getting loaned the spot. But that means if the value of an LEC team goes up next year, they might have to pay more cash. It's just like they're
yes.
waiting for them to. It's like they're waiting to have the cash to buy it, but it's going to hurt them in the long run because what it seems like is the owners don't want to give up their shares in the company. Um, and I guess reasons for that could be what we saw with Carlos just last week or 2 weeks ago or whatever, where if you're no longer the captain of the ship, sometimes some decisions are made that don't go your way. And maybe that could be a reason why they don't want to sell shares. But with that, you don't exactly have the cash to do everything you want to do.
Yeah.
unless you're a
And
billionaire.
yeah, and for what it's worth, Wooloo's rumors about the rosters, we obviously talked about in our last episode that Han Sama would likely be on that org, but they are potentially going to be keeping Cabochard and Saken for their LEC team, which they already have under contract on the LFL team, which have been two of their longest tenured players over the last couple of years. Cabochard was one of the better tops in Europe for pretty much his entire career in the EULCS/LEC. Went over to KC and has been there for the last 2 years. So he's an LEC level player. Saken, who's previously played in the LEC, under a couple teams, I think. Vitality one, Misfits the other, maybe not Misfits, maybe it's somebody else. I know it was Vitality, but from the looks of Hansama, Saken, and Cabochard, that's already looking like a pretty decent team for the LEC, if that's the rumored roster.
Interesting. What else, JT? What else is on the quick news docket?
That's it.
Nope, you're missing one.
What am I missing? Oh, is it the pace?
PC time,
Yeah,
man.
I didn't actually write it down here, but now thank you for
Yeah, I made
reminding
sure
me.
to write it down because I saw you posted it in the channel or whatever. I'm really sad about this. I've told you before that I think he is a very underrated caster in North America.
Yeah, I
I
agree.
don't think I don't think if I'm being completely honest, I don't think he does particularly good job of interviewing, but I think his casting, his show casting is very very good and I think is very underrated. Like I yeah, I've said this many times to you. I've said it to Andrew, one of our other buddies. I am sad that he's not going to be casting anymore because I think that that's a guy that should have got more recognition, especially for how long he's been doing it. And I think doing an amazing job. For some reason, doesn't get the
Yeah, we don't want to name any names here, but he's definitely better than a few of the people
than
on the
someone else.
LCS. No, a few people on the LCS caster depth charts, we'll call it. I'm
Yeah,
thinking of 3 people, but that's just me.
I'm only thinking of one.
Well, we all know who the one is, but we don't need to say it.
Yeah, I don't need to can of worms. But anyways, I always thought that he should get the same kind of recognition as someone like Freak or like Flowers because I think he does an amazing job. And I guess it looks like he's not going to be doing it anymore. So he's leaving the LCS. I read the thing. I don't really know what he's doing next. I kind of got Valorant vibes, but it seems like he hasn't been given the go ahead to do Valorant stuff. It feels to me, in pure guess here, guys, it feels to me like he wants to try and do Valorant. He did not say anything about Valorant in his post, so I could be completely wrong here. But he says that he still absolutely loves esports, but his time with the LCS is done. So I don't know what's next for him, honestly. Who knows?
I have no idea, but if he's with the Riot, still that'd be cool.
Yeah. Anyways, that's it for me.
That's it for me.
Okay, that is it for this episode then. Um, Huge shout out to those who have been finding the channel and hitting the like button and subscribing and whatnot. That stuff, of course, helps us. And I will remind you guys that we rely on you guys hitting those buttons to help us grow our channel because we we do not get paid to do this. We don't have any I don't know, any sponsors or anything like that. We are not former LCS players. We don't have this level of clout that you need to be big content creators. And so we rely on you guys helping us with comments and whatnot and getting the algorithm going for us. It has helped us quite a bit over the last couple of months. And so if you guys are enjoying the content, hit the like button, subscribe, please. And obviously, we'll keep doing content whenever we can. At the moment, plan is for next episode to come out on Monday, pretty much right after the games end, because I think groups week 1 ends on Monday, if I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken.
week 1 in quotations because they don't really do it like that anymore. But yeah,
Yeah, and I think like we're gonna be in New York for week 2 of whatever of groups. So I don't know. We're gonna try to do an episode in New York. Is that what we're doing?
yeah,
I guess we'll have to figure that out how
yeah.
we're gonna
We'll
do that.
we'll have
But
to figure something out.
for now, episodes should be normal next week, and then the week following that, we don't know, but we'll have to wait and see. But that's gonna be it for now. Hope you guys are enjoying Worlds. I mean, if you're listening to an LCS podcast and EG got out, I'm assuming you did. And hopefully we see more of that in groups. Hopefully we get at least one team out of groups. That is the NA dream, and maybe someone goes on a run. But that's it for this episode. Thanks for joining us, guys. This has been episode 102 of the Clown Fiesta podcast.